Greetings, everybody. So welcome to another edition of Then, Now and the Future. And today we're stepping back a bit. We've been sort of going through the 60s, 70s, 80s. And now we're stepping back a bit to look at the whole 20th century in a way, just through family photographs. Both of us have been looking at some family photographs recently. So we wanted to draw some generalizations or some insights from that. Marcus?
Yeah, it was interesting. I had a huge box of photos that I inherited from my late mother, and I've spent quite a few hours just going back through those and reminiscing, looking at relatives that I've never known, grandparents who died before I was born, looking at clothing, looking at cars and buildings and the whole thing. But one of the things that struck me was the way the whole family dynamic, the whole family relationship has changed, because many of those photos were of large family groupings. And I'm just wondering, certainly for you and for anyone who might be watching and listening, how often as families do we get together?
Yeah, that's it. So things have changed about the dynamics of families. And I was just trying to, we basically, with us, we were looking at some photos, which I guess a few years ago were coming to my light. My mother was digging them out, and my sister wanted to sort of put them in some sort of order, put some names on them, really. So what I was looking at was like spanning a century, really. So some of the early photographs were late 19th or perhaps early 20th century, but certainly that kind of order. And the most striking thing was clothing. Okay, so, and the most striking photograph was four ladies, some sort of ancestors, I think on my mother's side, sitting on the beach, pebbled beach somewhere, completely dressed. You know, you say dressed to the nines, and they had these big hats, you know, like this. So, you know, that is amazing, isn't it? To think, you know, nobody would do that on the beach these days, except if it was like a fancy dress show or something.
But you're absolutely right, because my maternal grandfather died before I was born. But all of the photos that I've seen of him, he is very formally dressed.
Yes.
Whether there's some work photos, there's some photos where he was giving a speech, I'm guessing at a wedding or a family do, social scenes, but in every single one, he is very formally dressed and looks quite austere.
Yeah, that's it. I mean,
I'd love to have known him.
Yeah, that's what was striking me about now going into the 20th century, so early to mid 20th century, that the formality continued. And these were sometimes just some sort of family get together, not even the wider family, it seemed. For some reason, I mean, I can't imagine they were dressed like that every day, but, you know, the gentlemen were with the tie and a suit. And there was one where they were wearing what they call a morning suit, you know, that that particular. So, I mean, that was probably an occasion, but what were not special occasions, as far as I could see, or not very special occasions, they were wearing this, you know, and now I think we would just feel so uncomfortable, wouldn't we, sitting around the house in a suit and tie. So it just says something about the very way people felt physically, isn't it, and what they were prepared to feel through a normal weekend day or something like that.
Yeah, I'm getting it dragged over a bit later than that, because there were some photos I looked at in my very early married days, and it was obviously a family get together, but I'm there in a three-piece suit and a tie.
Yes.
I wouldn't dream of doing that now.
Yeah.
But, you know, I would have been in my, you know, mid-20s, I suppose, and
yeah.
It was obviously a family occasion of some sort.
Yeah. Yeah, the next one, and now that's just coming to my mind, is a picture of all of my mother's side, so my aunts and uncles on my mother's side, and we were in sort of northeast London. Well, no, Epping Forest. That's really Essex, isn't it? Anyway, but that's where my aunt lived, and it was in the garden, and it was the late 60s. And you could see from my father and my uncle, the hairstyle was like sort of slightly hirsute. They didn't have long hair because they had sort of fairly official jobs, but their hair was a bit sort of rough, and they had the style, the very distinctive style of that period. But of course, no ties or anything. But then it was, they were already I think one of my uncles had a jacket on, but there were no ties, no. And so it was already well on the way to a much more comfortable. It was some sort of family get together, but a more comfortable sartorial setup.
Well, it's strange that we should both have been going through family photos completely independently of each other. One of the things it has done, though, is reconnect me with some of my cousins, because back in the day, family groups lived quite close together. So when I was growing up, aunts and uncles lived a walk away, a bus ride away. And I grew up with all of my cousins. Now, we've all moved to different parts of the country, different parts of the world. And I don't know if I need an excuse. I probably didn't, but it gave me an excuse to going through these photos to separate them out and get back in touch with my cousins and say, you know what, I've got a whole bunch of photos of you as a kid and your parents and stuff. Can I send them to you? So one of the things it has done is reconnect me with some of my cousins who I haven't.
So what, you want to send the hard copies? Is that the idea? Or I mean, how?
Yeah, I've sent them the original photos. I've bundled them all up, and I suppose I could have scanned them into the computer and sent them that way. But you know what? Isn't it nicer to have the originals?
Well, of course it is. It's just keeping track of it all. I think what my mother's doing is she's got the hard copies, and basically there's a lot of photographs of them now. But yeah, but having the real thing it's certainly it's a whole different ball game, really. We had them out. We're looking like with a magnifying glass, checking out the details. So,
but that's one of the things that it reminded me of, though, looking back through these photos. Growing up, as I said, the immediate family lived relatively close, and come the weekend, we would call on each other. They would call on us. We would call on them. It wasn't a formal arrangement. You called in on the off chance. Nobody took offence that you'd come round without an invitation.
Yeah.
My mother on a Friday would bake in the expectation that somebody would be coming.
Yeah.
And I always remember my brother had a friend who was a taxi driver, and on a Saturday it would always just so happen that he would have a fair in our area, and he would call in for a taxi and a piece of cake. But it was amazing how every Saturday afternoon he just happened to be in the area.
Yeah. I'm trying to think back about when I was young. I don't think there was a lot of dropping in, but like as kids we would just go across the road to friends on that permanent thing. But in terms of at a higher, adult level, I currently live in Serbia, and here in this village, there's a bit of that. There's one or two people who might just drop in, and then the kids thing, going out on the street because the kids are passing, something like that. But yeah, I mean, we're much more in a culture of arranging everything, aren't we? I think that's true pretty well everywhere.
Yeah, and before we started recording, we were saying these days, we live in nuclear families, don't we? We're very self-contained.
Yes.
We live our own lives. We'll have some friends that we keep in touch with, but it seems that we keep in touch with friends rather than we keep in touch with families.
Well, yes. I mean, I can say to that, I mean, but in my pattern, I would say I'm keeping in touch with certain members, some close members of the family, but that's it. And beyond that, yeah, I'm not really in touch with people, which is a shame. So yeah, we have to keep always examining this, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So what does family mean to you? Is it the immediate family? Is it the wider family?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. It's both, isn't it? It's both. I mean, the family is, the immediate family, the nuclear family, which is, husband, wife, children, in traditional terms, and but it also means the wider family, which is grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, isn't it? And I think those are the two most common. And then after that, well, you might use it in an even wider sense, but it's funny, in Serbian they say sister. My wife says my sister, but she actually means her cousin. So that word is, sorry.
I was just expressing some surprise.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it. I took a bit of getting used to for me, but that's just the way they do it, And she has cousins who've moved out to Sweden, moved out to Norway, and she's my sister this, my sister that, But in Serbian, that's the way it is.
Confusing though.
Yeah, but everyone seems to take it in their stride. It's just only for an outsider it can cause this confusion. I mean, there's probably some nuance there if you know what to listen out for. But occasionally I have to check. She has got a direct blood sister. So, but it's seldom that we don't know who she's referring to.
And again, so that's sort of local custom, isn't it? My wife has a friend who does exactly the same thing, calls her sister.
Yes.
So,
really?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's like the thing, calling somebody auntie or uncle. That happens in England, doesn't it? That you would call a close friend of the parents would be called uncle or auntie, as a way of a term of respect, really.
Yeah, respect, endearment. It was something more than a casual acquaintance.
Yeah,
it wasn't a blood relative.
Yeah, so this was
Mm.
a tradition that my family avoided. So I refer to my aunts and uncles just without any, aunt, uncle prefix, as it were.
Oh, really? Because in my family, that would have been hugely disrespectful.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's how we do it. So we just everyone's used to that. So that's one thing. Also, going back to the photographs, both my parents and one of the uncle and aunt's weddings that we saw the pictures of, the bride didn't dress in a white bridal gown. It was just some elegant costume, you would call it, wouldn't it? So that's an insight as well. But I think, again, my family is a bit on this sort of pioneering in that side.
The other thing that struck me were two things. One is my parents ran a grocery shop in North London, and I have a great picture of my dad behind the counter with some of the very old-fashioned sort of brands and stuff that we've all forgotten about.
Yeah.
But looking back at those pictures of my parents, some when they were obviously courting, there's an old-fashioned phrase.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And you think, wow, don't they look like they're so much in love with each other? And I don't remember my parents looking as young and as attractive as they are in the photos. You only seem to remember them looking like they looked when they were older, towards the tail end of their lives. And I look at photos of me with them when I was a kid thinking, well, my mum looks really attractive. Or doesn't my dad look fit and handsome? But I don't remember them looking.
Yeah, we don't. That's right. I mean, in more sort of relaxed position, sort of point it just looks different if it was prepared for that purposes. I mean, not in family life. I mean, because in family life you have all the stresses, don't you, and the sort of familiarity. So that side of it is not so.
Yes, but just the physicality of them. I don't remember them. When I would have been a kid, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever it was, and I don't remember them looking that young. I only remember them how they were to life.
Yeah.
you know, which is a shame in a way, because, you know, I look back and think, wow, you know, mum and dad look really. Some of the holiday photos that they took that I now have, and I think, wow, they look like they're having a really good time. And I would have been quite wrapped up in my own stuff. So in my second marriage, I was a carer for a lot of the time, and I was wrapped up in all of that and the isolation, I suppose, of being a carer. And mum and dad went away on some, you know, lovely holidays, and I didn't really talk to them about that. I guess I was a bit resentful because, you know, I was a carer. I didn't get that sort of break. And I look back with a certain amount of guilt now, I suppose, that they've gone on these lovely holidays and I didn't talk to them about them and ask them about them and, you know, get them to tell me about them, because you get very wrapped up in your own being.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I always feel about family, that I could have done more, you know, definitely more communication. You know, you just look back and you see how you're so wrapped up in your own affairs that, and it's always so good, you know, to sort of spend time with the family and connect and, you know, build up the relationship.
Yeah. I talked to my cousin. So I grew up with my cousin. So his dad and my dad were brothers, obviously, and they couldn't be more different. My cousin's dad, my uncle, very outgoing man, a great storyteller. You know, would always sort of command the room if we were at a family gathering, whereas my dad was quite a quiet bloke.
Mm.
And I now rely on my cousin. I speak to my cousin fairly regularly, and he tells me stories about, you know, his dad and my dad when they were young and stuff they did in the army. And I said to him, you know, Mitchell, you know what? You're so lucky that your dad not only told you this stuff, but that you can still remember it.
Yes.
I didn't have that sort of relationship with my dad. He was quite a quiet sort of guy, and he wasn't a storyteller. He didn't like doing that sort of stuff. And I think it's such a shame, you know, because, you know, when they go, all of that stuff goes with them, and, you know, we should record it. And I'd love to know more about my grandparents and my great grandparents, and if it's not recorded anywhere, then it all gets lost.
Yes. Yeah, I feel this. I think it's a very big regret not having just more contact with the family in every way. And it's so easy just to let it slip, isn't it? And then once you let it slip, it's very hard to pick up again. And I think there's such a richness there, you know, that just, you know, ongoing contact and just, you know, knowing the person and having a sort of deeper view of life, really, a more three-dimensional. And we just slip in there, just become just a person in a picture that you saw 5 years ago or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I remember as a kid, the family get-togethers, talking about where the family originated from. My family originated from Poland stroke Russia. I think at the time Poland was part of Russia. So was it Poland? Was it Russia? But talking about where they are, and I remember as a kid thinking, oh, this is so boring. I don't really care. And, you know, but now all those people who knew that stuff have gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm now at a point in my life where, you know what, I'm actually quite interested in that now.
Yes.
But I've got no one who can fill in those gaps.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
So, you know, I think it's a case of, you know, sort of do it while you can, you know.
Yeah, make the most. Yeah, if in doubt, you know, keep the connection. You know, if you have some opportunity to do that.
Well, and I think for our future generations, you know, for, you know, children and grandchildren and great grandchildren, wouldn't it be great for them just to have some sort of record that they could refer to? So I'm not quite sure what it is about us as people, but we need to know where our roots are. We need to know. We know where we are now. We know, you know, where we live and where we were born, and those are our immediate roots. But our past roots, where did we originate from? How did we get here?
It's important, isn't it, to know something, You know, I think it's just natural.
Yeah, I mean, I have a great deal of envy. Like a lot of people, I've gone to visit these stately homes, and you read the booklets, and it says, oh, this house has been in the family for sort of 500 years or something, and they've got paintings of all their ancestors up on the wall. Isn't it great to be able to trace your line back that that effectively, but exactly where you came from, what people were doing, what side.
Yeah, I guess for people in that position it's a lot easier, isn't it? Because they're already an object of public interest, so there's some effort has been made. But for the rest of us, it's quite an effort, and usually there's somebody in the family who takes an interest and heads off to the records in one way or another.
Yeah, I'd love to say that I have a skill in doing that, but I don't. But I have an interest, and I suppose we'll continue to follow that interest as best I can.
Yes, yeah. I mean, if you can actually put it down on paper, and you're helping other people, aren't you? So,
and as a former journalist, I mean, writing is second nature to me.
Right.
Writing an autobiography, maybe not quite so much, but it's something I think, maybe I should make the effort and commit some of these things.
Well, yeah, why not? Why not? I mean, somebody's going to read it, and it's a value to the public, to the world, to everybody.
Well, just to future generations of the family.
Yeah, to pass down.
As a coach, one of the things I say to my clients is, what's the legacy that you want to leave? What is it that you want to be known for?
Yeah, I guess we need to think more often about this, don't we? I think we get sort of bogged down in day-to-day issues. But yeah.
But it's an interesting question, and people don't think very much about that.
Well, that's it. I think because it's like all these things, it's very hard to break out of your immediate concerns, isn't it, to sort of a bigger picture. And I think a lot of it's about finding ways to consistently do that. And I plead guilty as well in this. I mean, I'm so, you have these more inspired periods, don't you, when things are clearer and you have a bit of perspective, and then you go into a sort of some phase or other where you have, I don't know, basically too much on your plate, really. For me, it goes in cycles.
So maybe that's a question to leave for our viewers and our listeners, is the legacy question. What is it that you want to be remembered for? What is it that you want to leave behind?
Wow.
We'll remember.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that next time. We'll see what comes up.
Big question.
Yeah, great. Okay, Marcus, it's been really great to have a chat again.
Peter, as always, thoroughly enjoyed it, and we'll speak again soon.
Yeah, we'll be on talking to each other soon. Yeah, great. Okay, see you then.
All the best.
Cheers.